Yeah, let's just get going. I chose this topic and or this title rather, and the title has two components. One is a question. What is meditation? And the other component is questioning the question. Really, what is meditation really? And I think both aspects, if you are interested in meditation, you actually want to just check in with both of these aspects regularly. What is meditation? What is it that's happening here? Practicing on this cushion. What is it? And then what is it? What is it really? Now, and what does that really do? We could just stick with the first part of the question, right? We could just say, what is meditation? And have our answer. But what does it do if we move on and then say, no, but really? Well, the way I'm gonna frame that for the sake of this conversation is to say, to ask about really is like having our conceptual mind, our ideas, our possible ideas about what is meditation. Have our conceptual mind check in for a moment with our actual experience. Like if we're asking that question, what is it really? Where would we even look for an answer? In this session tonight, I'll actually be approaching the question from several different angles. We can answer, or we can look at the question historically. What is it really historically? Like in the sense of when and how and where did the practice of still-seated meditation develop? We can look at the question from the perspective of a particular school, which, like, again, for those of you who are new to us, Dharma Sangha is a Soto Zen lineage in the tradition of Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, and then my teacher, Baker Roshi, who's sitting right in front of me. Hi. And so we have, as a Soto Zen lineage, as a particular school, of course, there's the perspective of this school onto the question, what is meditation? Another school would answer the question differently. So it's also, I've been preparing for this talk or this, it's an exploration. For me, believe it or not, you're online, you may think, oh, I'm far away and Nicole is just telling me stuff. But for me, every talk, and that is very much a Zen thing to feel, is every talk is a conversation. Even if it's pretty what's the word? Not dialogical, but monological. But still the feeling is, it's an ongoing conversation. So the feeling is, we're joining into a conversation tonight that has really been going on for not just millennia. I mean, yes, millennia, that's a long time, but several of them, several millennia. And I've been feeling and looking into what is meditation. I don't know how big that was in the US, but when I grew up in Germany, there were these great little cartoons about love is ... by Kim Cassidy or something, I think. Do you guys know them? These love is ... and they're very sweet cartoons. And then every week there'd be a new answer about what love is. Love is just wanting to spend a moment together. And there are answers like that. I've been mulling that over and letting new responses arise. What is meditation? Meditation is ... And then you can kind of make your own little inner imaginary cartoon for each moment of meditation. What is meditation? Meditation is ... Just maybe staying. Even though everyone or everything says go. just staying within our experience, or just opening into a sense of caring. So again, like I'm also launching us here into our own question. And that is Zen. That's a Zen approach to say, oh no, let's not just read a text on what is meditation and then we know it. But really, first of all, let's ask ourselves, let's turn our conceptual mind in this case towards our actual experience. And the way I like to always just a particular vocabulary here, when I talk about actual experience, and that itself is an interesting concept. What would non-actual experience be like? So what is experience, but then what is the extra thing of actual experience? That suggests something. And that suggestion there also is actually quite important. The idea of there's some experience that is not really actual. That's more like borrowed maybe, or unreflected, or not as true as other layers of experience. All of these implications are there when we say our actual experience. So just again here, I'm planting a little seed saying we can tune in with ourselves. We can ask ourselves questions. We can ask into a field of knowing, which we don't even know what the answers are going to be. That's the implication here. And can we do that? And how do we do that? What is meditation? Really? What are we tuning into when we're asking the question that way? Okay. So the way I'm just naming the territory is the knowing of the feeling body. And that's a juxtaposition here. So we now have two things. We have the knowing of the conceptual mind, and we can answer any question from the perspective of the knowing of the conceptual mind. And then I can say certain things, for example, about, in the Zen school, meditation is ... And then that would be, you'd get the usual answers of, it's just sitting. That's the common translation of so-called shikantaza. Anyone who's ever tried to so-called just sit has noticed, I think, that there are whole worlds and layers of problems hidden in that word just. Sitting is fine, but just like what? Like just sit, not do anything else. Does that mean not think? Oh, well, how do you not think? And so forth. So in the word just, meaning like as in, not doing anything else other than. What does that really mean? Spoiler alarm. In the Zen tradition, the craft here is you're not really only taking away in this territory of just sitting the idea of other activities like thinking, or that's the main other activity you can do while meditating. You wouldn't usually be eating or watching TV while meditating. So it's like the alternative to just sitting is thinking a lot for most people, or getting stuck in emotional repercussions or joy rides. So if that's the idea in traditional Zen, you have here, what is meditation? Well, it's just sitting, meaning nothing other than sitting. And then you're finding that is not so easy. Usually the sitting mind, as soon as the mind just sits still, and you have the instruction, as you do in Zen meditation, not to move. That's the core and main, like when I started practicing Zen, when I first came to Johanneshof, we had a kind of, I think really still a quite Japanesey approach meaning nobody told us anything. We just had to figure everything out ourselves. We've changed that a lot. I see a number of residents at Johanneshof, and they all know we've for years now really worked on how do we actually welcome people and introduce them into the practice so that they end up wanting to come back. Because we realized if we just have them come and then we don't tell them anything, and then they have to get up at 4:30 in the morning, and all they are told is, by the way, this is all I was told is, you sit there and don't move. That was the only instruction I got. But that is so that means a lot of people don't come back if that's the only instruction you get. That can be done differently, and it's probably in our how we live today, what we expect today, and so forth. It's probably helpful and also compassionate to introduce people with more detail into the practice. But I will say, if you're really a seeker, and if practice as it is in Zen really is an autodidactic process, you can learn almost everything you need to learn just from the simple instruction, don't move. It would be a different kind of talk to talk about why and how you can learn everything just from that one idea. But just very basically, again, what is meditation really? Well, it would need to start with some intention. And the Zen approach here is, let's take the simplest intention possible. Don't move. And you're starting with just the physical body, the idea of not moving. And then that intention, what does it do? Well, first thing it does, it brings forth all the moments in which you have an impulse of wanting to move. And now you have a problem. Now you're like, but I have an intention not to move. So now you're already setting up a whole dynamic, and that dynamic is the entirety of practice. It just becomes more and more refined, more and more subtle, more and more articulated, but basically you're setting up the dynamic of your intentional mind, not moving, and all the different moments in which there's impulses resisting the intentional mind, wanting to avoid it, wanting to distract from it. So you're already setting up a dynamic of an intention working within you. And that beginning is actually quite important for no matter how we're going to meditate. It is a profoundly intentional practice. And you do need a lot of a really strong commitment actually to your intention to practice in order to practice. Because it's not going to be the real path of the seeker. Is by far not always going to be pleasant, as most of us know. So we're going to actually need a strong intention that's functioning within us. Then you need to figure out how to hold an intention without too much effort, because you're going to notice too much effort really disturbs the feeling of meditation. So again, I hope you can start to see how just a simple intention, like don't move, is beginning to really create a whole inner dynamic and landscape in which you have to teach yourself quite a bit about how to hold the body still, even when impatience arises. And then how to hold the mind still. How can the non-moving body teach the mind to also not move? Yeah. What I'm saying here is that once you start meditating, once we start meditating, we're really beginning to explore inner dynamics, beginning to observe how our mind functions, what the mind does when it's kind of left alone. It's like in Zen meditation, the concept is, and again, it's like other schools do that differently, but in Zen meditation, while the form is extremely structured, like you're told where to sit, you're told when to sit, you're basically also told how to sit, how to hold your hands, how to hold your body. But you're not really told what to do while sitting. So while the outer form is extremely structured, inside, like the inner space, is in Zen meditation entirely unstructured. And that unstructuredness in Zen meditation ends up meaning that you're going to find we're each finding our own path within meditation. That's, by the way, that's one of the reasons in Zen we don't have curriculums or anything. We don't have a particular, first you do this, then you do this. The idea is the mind of meditation needs to start unfolding within, like it'll unfold for each of us in our own unique way. And from the perspective of Zen, it's better not to have too many ideas about what you should be feeling, what you should be doing. You're just the mind is teaching the mind. There's some feeling like that. But what I can do today is give a few ideas about how the mind can teach the mind. How the way I'm putting it now, the wider mind or the wider knowing of the feeling body can teach the multi-layered conceptual mind. So how that process works, that we can talk about. Okay. I talk a lot to people and try to always, of course, support each person I speak with in their particular practice process. And one thing I've found out over time is there are 3, I would say, like dynamic drivers that shape how you practice. 3 questions that actually, like if you're very aware of how you're holding these questions, then it tends to help your practice to unfold most fruitfully. If you're holding in any one of these 3 questions that I'm about to tell you about, if you're holding unconscious views or hidden agenda, or like for those of you interested in reading literature, hints, ideas, there's a book called Ending the Pursuit of Happiness by Barry Magid. And he has a whole thing about how, especially in Western Buddhism, how much it is the case that he calls it a secret practice, hidden assumptions that we hold about practice are shaping and oftentimes blocking our meditation. So we may have ideas like, I shouldn't think, for example, that deeply can shape our practice as an expectation, as an instruction we give to ourselves. And we may not even be so consciously aware that we're holding such a secret practice, such an implicit view of practice. Could also be, I should be relaxed in meditation. And then that will shape your meditation. It's like you'll compare all your actual experience to the idea of thinking you should be relaxed. But that's an implicit concept. It's a secret, unless you're very aware of it. It's a secret concept that just kind of tends to tunnel your vision. And then you can't see what's actually there because you're only seeing whether you're relaxed or not relaxed, whether you're thinking or not thinking. So it is worthwhile to look into what the views are, the conceptual views are we have about practice. And that's actually a point where I'd like to check in with you guys and see if I hope that some of you are willing to write a little bit into the chat, and then I read just, some I probably won't be able to read everything, but let's do a little inventory here. The 3 questions that are driving our meditation practice are why, what, and how. So the first question is, and I invite you just to take time for yourself for a moment and just whatever comes first. What would you say? If you're interested in meditation, why are you meditating? What comes to mind? And just take a moment, and if you would, it'd be wonderful if some of you could write it into the chat. And again, I would just read out a few responses that come up here. So again, why are you meditating? Somebody is saying for clarity. Somebody is saying for simplicity. To understand my experience of being human more deeply. This is fun. Everyone, you should look into the chat here. This is great. To find equanimity in the wholeness of experience, freedom, coherence, curiosity. Okay, this keeps going. This is very, very interesting. But you see, we each have our own, why? Why am I practicing? And you should, rather than, of course, it's much better than to practice because we think we should. It's like if you have ever tried to, for me, it's jogging. It's the activity of jogging. If I jog, it's because I think I should, which is why I never jog. So it's good to have your own why. We'll be working with these questions. I keep reframing them, and you will see just reframing the questions a little bit. I hope we can see. It's very experimental what I'm going to be doing here tonight with you guys. But I'll be reframing the question and seeing how by reframing the question, we can change how these 3 drivers actually work in us and how they can change and transform our meditation practice. So again, I love the practice. Somebody says presence, to be present. Okay, all right. We got the feeling, right? There's wholesome qualities, as the Buddhist tradition would say. A lot of wholesome qualities, and also many other answers are pointing in the direction of insight into existence. Now, it is quite possible actually to cluster the why of meditation, I think, into 3 larger categories, and I'm seeing them here very clearly. One is liberation. That would be traditionally the Upanishads. When meditation was first developed, it was just a human response to the truth of impermanence. That deep inquiry, that's timeless, not cultural, nothing to do with Buddhism, first of all. I always find it so important to point out, at the time of the Buddha, there was no Buddhism. There was just inquiry into what people did. There was 3, you could group the society at the time of the Buddha into 3 kinds of groups. One is the Brahmins that were holding, as most of you would know, I think, that were holding the institutional ritual knowledge for the official religion at the time. So that's like the societal, institutionalized religion, the Brahmins. Then there is the householders. That's the many, many people who are whose main job is to survive, whose main job is to maintain their families, to provide for their families, to keep themselves and their families alive. And then there's the seekers, the shramanas. That's us, I think. I'm just going to call us that. And there's the seekers. And the seekers, you could group their, what are they seeking? The seekers originally are looking for a way to live that is okay with impermanence and death. Because that is not an easy thing to do. Like, how do you, if you really, one way to be okay with impermanence and death is to just push it out of awareness entirely, which is, I think, what many societies, at least this like German society I grew up in, the way you deal with death is you just kind of forget about it. And when somebody is close to, like if, for example, somebody's close to dying and say their family, many people don't know how to relate to that family anymore. Like one way to deal with that incredibly painful truth of impermanence is to just ignore it, to pretend it's not there. When somebody is clearly dying or in bad health or whatever, to basically feel and say, oh, it's going to be okay again. It's going to be fine. That's one way, but that's not the Buddhist way. The Buddhist way is to face it, to fully acknowledge it, to fully accept it, and to figure out once again how to be as an entirely embodied person, how to be even happy. Not just push the world away and say, okay, well then that means I can't love anything or anyone because it's just going to be too terrible when I lose it. That's another way. You say, oh no, I am fully aware of impermanence, but what that means is I will just push the world away so I don't have to be sad. But then you still end up having the problem of we're also impermanent ourselves. So anyways, it's like that is just one of the timeless human inquiries, how to deal with our lives in the unnegotiable, the one unnegotiable fact that everything will change, that everything will disappear. And so the Buddhist tradition is basically saying and promising that the practice of meditation is a way to locate ourselves fully in our experience and to even transform the experience of impermanence into an experience of appreciation. Because it's impermanent, we must love it and be with it fully right now. When else? We can't only love it if we know we're going to have it forever. No, we love it because it's beautiful now. So we start impermanence for the Buddhist meditator. You're learning how to be open in such a way that appreciation right now is all you need. And then there's an acceptance of when it is time, when time is ripe, then maybe we must let go. And that is sad. But it's also okay, because such is life. There's that kind of attitude. So again, the first category of like traditional why meditate is liberation from dukkha, liberation from all the different forms of suffering, which the underlying fuel, that's the idea here, you must investigate this for yourself, but the idea is the underlying fuel for all forms of suffering is the fact of impermanence. And a second category for a why is, as many people wrote into the chat, is a wish for valid knowledge. In the midst of all the information, not just our senses provide us, but like nowadays, media, everything. What can I trust? What is real insight? What can I really rely on? What is valid cognition? And there's a feeling that for meditators, that it is possible. Meditation always is related to developing what we could call altered states of consciousness. And here, altered, I don't mean anything too special. I just mean outside or not within our usual predicting and externalizing state of mind. So the idea here is that ordinary consciousness is actually a biological thing that the human brain, again, independent of cultures, just has figured out how to do. The human mind can project permanence into the world and then name things, entities. You can see it in child's developments in such a way that that permanence gets like fixated in some way. So the externalized, predictable world. There's a lot of cognitive science about that. I'm not going to go into it now, but we did touch on this in the beginning with saying, well, there's experience and then there's actual experience. And experience without the actual, in this definition, would be the kind of experience that's penetrated by concepts of the experience. So like you're looking at a tree and it's just tree. And there are all the trees. You're seeing the generality of things. Concepts create generalities. What you're losing is the uniqueness of each moment, the uniqueness of each experience. So the thing here is that one can enter into a more immediate but unnamed world. And that too is a core skill of meditation practice. And entering into an unnamed world where, as Suzuki Roshi so famously said, sometimes a tree is a tree, that's the conceptual mind. But sometimes a tree is a poem. So when is it that a tree becomes a poem, that a tree speaks to you? What is that cognition? Again, I'm calling it the cognition of the feeling body. And it is one of the core skills. You can call it a miniature altered state of consciousness. To teach your eyes to see poems in the world. To teach your ears to hear music everywhere. Teach your body to feel the mystery of aliveness in a profoundly engaging way. So valid cognition, and it may come, like if you've ever had like some intuitive moment or a moment outside of ordinary consciousness, there's several signatures of such knowing, and one of them is it feels more true somehow, and oftentimes also more nourishing. Okay, that's the second why. And the third is, and I think that's just a position I'm taking here, is the third is most important for how we practice today, is an ethical question. What's our responsibility as these beings that we are? How should we live? What does it mean to be a participant in this wider earth field of aliveness? So the third question, again, I think it's kind of amazing. And again, I'm seeing it here. Somebody wrote, because I love the world in the chat. Why do you meditate? Because I love the world. That's I would say, I would interpret that as a kind of ethical impulse. Because of caring. Because of wanting to live and teach ourselves. Again, like we have these three things here. To be free from freer. To be free from how we suffer. Just from the mere truth of existence. First, how to have more profound insight into how we actually exist. And third, because we care, to meditate because we care about this life, about this world. when you do it at home with a little bit more time, you could also ask, what do you think meditation is? Like, what is it for you that just sitting around turns into meditation? That's a good question, actually. When is it just sitting around? And when do you think, oh, now this is meditation? So what is meditation for you? What is your concept about it, or your view on it, let's say? And the third question would be, and how do you meditate? And you would see, we're not going to do this. Maybe we just do it for one little thing here. You'd see everyone does something else. It's totally amazing. So if for those of you who've been meditating for some time, what do you do when you meditate? How do you meditate? Like, what is the inner activity? What's the instruction you give yourself when you meditate? But so these are these three dynamic drivers. It's good for a meditator to be somewhat aware of what they are for you. Why is it that you are practicing? What is it that you call practice? And how do you practice? To have some explorative awareness of these three, because they will shape your meditation. Most of my work when I talk to people is to uncover when there are unconscious views just functioning in any of these three questions. And then usually to take them out. Usually to just free the person from some unconscious idea. Like, for instance, a person might say to me, no, I can't meditate. And I go, what could that possibly mean? How can you not? It's like, for me, it's like somebody saying, I can't be present within my own aliveness. Then the question becomes, well, what's going on? And then oftentimes the person will say something like, oh, because I always think. Yeah, but from a practice point of view, that doesn't mean that you can't meditate at all. That's just a view, that meditation has to be without thinking. But here's maybe, if I can give you one practice, many of you would be familiar with this, but for those of you who are fairly new, it's there's two things. One is, as Barry Magid would say, with these secret views that we have, or these secret practices that we have. It's not so much that they shouldn't be there. The problem is if they stay secret. That's one aspect. And the other is that you don't try to not think in meditation, but what you do is you become so that you can feel, I am the space in which this thought arises. So you're kind of shifting your attention out of the content of mind, out of I am thinking. No, I am the space in which this thought arises. And then, as Suzuki Roshi would say, and then you don't invite that thought for tea. Now you're no longer your thought. And now you have a choice to be, you've set up a host mind, the host that hosts all experience. I am the space in which this experience, this feeling, this emotion is arising. And when it comes to any experience, you're noticing it, you're accepting it, you're feeling it, and then you're releasing it, but you're not inviting it to tea. That would be attachment, or identification. So you want to stay within the open present space in which whatever it is can arise just as it is. I just do one last thing for today, and that is, as I promised, to at least ask the first question we just looked at in a different way. And let's see, this is experimental, as I said. I've never done this before, and I wonder what will happen for you, if anything. But please do just take a moment and sit upright if you can. Kind of take your meditation posture. And forget about whatever you just heard or what's present in your mind, and just bring your attention to this present moment. Notice your experience. And then let's explore the question more from the perspective of the mind of meditation. So just take a moment and yes, there's you, but let the mind of meditation become a presence in its own right. To have that feeling. To let the mind or the bodily mind of meditation become its own kind of presence. And then I'll invite you to ask yourself the question, is there anything that the mind of meditation is calling you into? What is it? How is the mind of meditation calling you? Is there any calling coming from the mind of meditation? And don't construct an answer, don't look for an answer, but rather just see if there's some discovery, some answer arising, maybe even a surprising response. Is there any calling for you that you might want to listen to, any feeling that's arising? How is the mind of meditation calling you? So we're just listening. And again, if there's anyone who would like to write something into the chat, please feel free to do so, but also just take your time. Any calling, what's the feeling of calling? What's the experience of being called by the mind of meditation? Somebody says, you are invited. Someone else, yeah, but who? I feel that it wants me to reconnect. Music. Just be here. It's wordless. It's home. Calling my heart. It is compassion. Vastness. To sink into the universe. Stillness is calling. Be stillness. All right. So these shifts in perspective. Again, we're looking in this talk here at the question and finding really our own truth about meditation. What is meditation? And then really, I've invited, just to summarize here, a simple shift of perspective. Asking from the perspective of our personal self, our conceptual minds, which is a good answer. It's not a wrong answer. But it can make a difference in the dynamic of your practice to ask from the perspective of the mind of meditation. So you can do, as a takeaway thing if you want to explore meditation more from the perspective of meditation itself, with less selfness in it, with less me in it, less you in it, you can ask the why, what, and how from the perspective of the mind of meditation. Let meditation show you why, and just receive it. Listen and receive. Why? Just listen and receive. And it may not at all come in words and phrases. It may just come in a feeling of calling, feeling touched, something resonating within our bodies. Our body may know, even if our mind doesn't. And then, what does meditation, that would be the second way to ask the transformed question, what does meditation want to reveal to you? Let it show itself. What is it that meditation may want to reveal to you? Can you see it? Well, do not hinder that which sees it. What is it that meditation wants to reveal to you? And how? How is meditation inviting you into its space? Well, allow yourself to be invited. So that is the transformed version that I'd like to share with you for this session today. Yes, we're meditating, and human beings have been meditating for incredibly long, for longer than history has recorded. Started saying and then got off track. 4,500 years ago is the first imprint found in what's today Pakistan on a kind of metal seal thing called the I have that written down somewhere, called the Pashupati seal. There's controversy on whether it's really showing a meditator or what the person is doing, but it's definitely showing a person sitting cross-legged. And it's definitely showing how that cross-legged position is a practice of divine transcendence. That part is clear. We just don't know what the person is thinking as they are sitting on that seal or what they think meditation is. But that is like 4,500 years ago. So meditation is something, we're entering a practice here that people, human beings, have been doing for longer than history has been recorded. We're joining that stream of transmitted teachings, and we can join it anytime. We should join it from within our own truth, and not just from within borrowed truth. So what is meditation? The point really is to first find out for yourself, both maybe from a conceptual point of view, but definitely also from the perspective of the feeling body, in which you're letting meditation show you why, what, and how. Okay? Let's call that enough. Thank you very much for your patience and for listening to me. The entire course is going to be continuously open to your personal processes, to your questions, and to just whatever it is that you're bringing into this course. While the process itself will be interactive, there's also going to be a rather systematic approach with regard to how to cultivate the body and mind of meditation. I hope you'll join this course, and if so, I'll be very much looking forward to practicing with you.